Hey guys, welcome to the All Sports Pass Podcast North. I'm your host, X-Nice Kriegel X, and welcome back to another video. Where today, welcome to the final episode of the 2024 SEC Schedule Predictions Series, where today I'm going to be covering the Missouri Tigers. And before we get into this video, you already know we got to start off with the verse of the day. And today's verse comes from Romans 8:11, and it says, "And if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit who lives in you." Amen to that. And also, guys, keep in mind that these are my predictions. These are what I think is going to happen over the course of the season. And also, guys, college football, you never really know. There may be games that say Missouri wins that they end up losing. There might be some games that say they lose, they end up winning. You just never know. But, however, it's going to be interesting to say the least. And also, guys, another thing before we get in this video, thank you so much for supporting this channel. Of course, I noticed a lot of my views came from this series, and thank you guys so much for supporting. And I just can't wait for future videos to come out. But hey, let's get started with this video. And so for Missouri, they're coming into this season following an 11-2 season, and of course, they won the Cotton Bowl over the Cotton Bowl Classic over Ohio State, And this was a pretty good season for Missouri, and they only had two losses, of course, one of them to LSU and the other to Georgia. But, however, I will say this, that it was overall a really good season for them. They, of course, went unranked from this season, of course, all the way up until week 5, where, of course, they played Vanderbilt, where they were ranked number 23, and then they lost to LSU, who was ranked 23 the next week, and then back when they were ranked number 21. Then they go unranked for a week against Kentucky, and then they get back on the ranks at number 20 against South Carolina. And then after that win against South Carolina, against Georgia, they were ranked 12, and they lost that game, so they just went down 2. And then they played Tennessee, and they were ranked 14th. And then they played Florida at number 9, played Arkansas at number 9, then played Ohio State at number 9. And so it was a pretty good season for them. And they do have some, and of course, two notable players coming back are Brady Cook and Luther, and their potential all-SEC wide receiver Luther Burden III. And keep in mind, this right here is from 2024 Football Times SEC predictions. The defense, although strong last year, lost several key players, though, and it's questionable. But, however, it's going to be interesting to say the least on how they rebuild. Of course, they want to continue that season from 2023, and 2024 is going to be interesting for them. But hey, let's see how I think they're going to do. So, of course, for week 1, they're going to be playing Murray State. And for Murray State, they're an FCS school. But, however, let me tell you something here. FCS schools normally do not win over FBS schools, but I will say this, we have seen some upsets happen, like most notably, y'all have heard me say this on the channel and in this series a lot. 2007, back when App State was an FCS school, they went up to Michigan at the Big House, and back when Michigan was ranked number 5, and Appalachian State went and upset Michigan, and because of that loss, Michigan dropped from number 5 to not being ranked the next week, and yeah, but unfortunately, I do not think that in this case, this should not be a win for Murray State. So Missouri's going to win this one, and I'm going to give this one to Missouri. All right, then the next week, they're playing Buffalo, and for Buffalo, they're heading into this. Hold on a second, guys. Sorry, it just reloaded on me. They're coming off a 3-9 season in the Mid-American Conference, and they went 3-5 in conference play. And sorry if I made a mistake there. They went 3-9 overall and 3-5 in conference play. I'm so sorry, had the words mixed up. And they, of course, let's see who they beat. They beat Akron 13-10 in overtime. They beat Central Michigan 37-13, and they beat Kent State 24-6. But Kent State did not really have a good season last season. as they went 1-11 and went 0-8 in conference play. So, yeah, and I'm going to say this, that normally schools like Buffalo, they normally don't beat FBS teams, but I'm going to say this, that this should be a win, that this is going to be a win for Missouri simply because Buffalo's also is coming off a bit of a rough season. And I also think, of course, that Missouri, I just think that Missouri's going to have the team to beat them. So, yeah, I'm going to give this one to Missouri. And here, let me reword that actually. I think Missouri's going to beat them because, like I said, some of a team like Buffalo, like most of the teams in this conference normally don't beat Power 4 schools. And if I said Power 5 earlier, sorry. Power 4 is now the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, because Pac-12 is now the Pac-2. But I will say this, that I just think that, that this is going to be a pretty good game for Missouri, as this, like I said, this is going to be a win. And then once they head, and then it's going to help them get momentum on this season. All right, and then the next week, they're playing Boston College, and let me tell you something. Boston College, they did win a bowl game last season, but however, when I'm looking at some of their results here, some of these results, like, of course, they were upset by Northern Illinois last season by a score of 27-24, and then they beat FCS Holy Cross 31-28, and then they lost to Florida State by a score of 31-29. But however, Florida State was ranked number 3 at this time, and if Boston College upset them, that would have been interesting, but it didn't happen. And then next week they played Louisville, where they lost 56-28, and then the next game they played Virginia, where they won 27-24, and then at Army the next week they won by a score of 27-24, and then at Georgia Tech they won 38-23, and they played UConn and won by a score of 21-14. And here's the thing, for UConn, I'm going to say this now, they are an independent, but they only went 3-9 this season. So really, this really, I don't know if now hey, a win's a win. But let me tell you something. I do not think that I think that's kind of a game that Boston College wants to forget. And they then beat Syracuse by a score of 17-10 before losing their next 3 games. Of course, the next few losses were Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, and Miami, Florida. And then they did win their bowl game against SMU, which was the Fenway Bowl. But however, I'm going to say this, that on the top here, they do have some 3-stars coming in on their transfer, but however, I just think this, that Boston College, if they want to have a good season, I think it's going to have to. I think they're probably going to have to rebuild pretty quick. But I'm just going to say this, that I don't think Boston College is going to win this game. I'm going to give this one to Missouri here. So yeah, I got Missouri going 3-0 in their first 3 games. All right, then the next game, Missouri's playing Vanderbilt in their first conference opponent of the season. And for Vanderbilt, they're coming into the season following a 2-10 season, and they went 0-8 in the SEC. And of course, Football Time here has Vanderbilt finishing 16th out of 16 teams. And it says the Commodores are perched at the bottom of the new 16 SEC teams. Last year, Vandy only won 2 games overall and 0 SEC games. Vandy has had several of their players transfer, so they will have to rely on 2 transfer quarterbacks to lead their team. Nate Johnson transferred from Utah, and Diego Pavia from New Mexico. It may be another long year for Vandy. And they also do have some key returnees, though. They have linebacker Langston Patterson. They have safety C.J. Taylor, running back Cedric Alexander, wide receiver Quincy Skinner Jr., and wide receiver Junior Sherrill. And I'm sorry if I said his name wrong. But, however, and heading in here, let me take a look at Vandy real quick. Their last 2, let's see who their 2 wins were against. Hold on there. Sorry. They won against Hawaii and Alabama A&M. And Alabama A&M is an FCS school for ultimately losing the rest of their games. And Yeah, it's probably going to, it may be another long year for Vandy, unfortunately, but I do think that if Vandy doesn't figure something out, I think Missouri's going to probably is going to win this one. So I'm going to give this one to Missouri. And then the next week they're off, and then the next game they're playing Texas A&M at Texas A&M for their first road game of the year. And let me tell you something. This here, I actually was kind of debating on who, if they were going to win or lose this game. But here's the thing. I think I'm honestly going to, I think this should be a win for Texas A&M. That this might be a hot take. I think Texas A&M might be able to win because now, of course, the Aggies are another SEC team with the new head coach Mike Elko, and he was hired to get the Aggies back in the title contention. It may not happen this year, but he has his injured quarterback Connor Wigman returning, plus his outstanding wide receiver Moose Muhammad. Since Elko excels as a defensive coach, the Aggie defense should be strong. And of course, I think the fact that Missouri also lost several key players on defense last year. It's going to be from last year. Excuse me. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do on defense. But I will say this: that I think Texas A&M could win this game. I actually think they will. And now, of course, this is also, I think, what I like to call a bit of a little kind of win-loss toss-up, I guess you could say, because I can actually see this game going both ways. But I do think that for this game, I think Texas A&M is going to win this one, so I'm going to give this one to Texas A&M. And then the next game, they're playing UMass, and UMass, they're an independent, and let's see what they did last season. They finished 3-9. And they did win against New Mexico State, and they did win against New Mexico State. They won against Army, and they won against Merrimack, which is FCS. And for UMass, I just have to say this: that I really think that this game, honestly, this is a win for Missouri. I just see it happening because if UMass doesn't figure something out, it's going to be another long year for UMass, in my opinion. So I'm going to give this one to UMass. And then the next game, they're playing Auburn, and Auburn showed some improvement last year, winning 6 games, but they still have a long way to go to be a title contender. Their last year's quarterback transferred to Michigan State, so they are not sure who the new QB will be, which is a very important question. But however, the 2024 Tiger defense should be improved. Also, guys, if you're wondering, I also use. If y'all are wondering like where I get some of my research at, it's actually in Football Time magazine. And so now, of course, I did actually find out on a video that that this magazine was printed before some of the transfers. So if some of this information is incomplete, I'm so sorry. It's the magazine. But however, I do think this though that for Auburn, I just think that Missouri is probably going to win this one. It's going to depend on what Auburn does on the depth side of things. But however, if they can figure out that depth, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. Excuse me, but I do think that of course on the depth, if Auburn can figure it out, it will be interesting to see what can happen. But however, I just think Missouri is going to be able to win this one. So I'm going to give this one to Missouri. In the next game, they're playing at Alabama, and for Alabama, the Tide's new head coach, Kalen DeBoer, has some big shoes to fill in replacing the legendary Nick Saban. He inherits an excellent quarterback, Jalen Milroe, and many other talented players to start his tenure at Alabama. Let's see some of these players real quick. And of course, some of their returning, they have offensive line, Tyler Booker, tight end C.J. Dupree, or I don't know how to say that name, I'm sorry. And they have quarterback Jalen Milroe back, and they have tight end Robbie Outs. Sorry, I don't know how to say that. They have offensive line Jaden Roberts. They have linebacker Jihad Campbell. They have defensive line Tim Keenan III. They have linebacker Deontay Lawson. And they have defensive back Malachi Moore back. They have defensive line Jaheim Otis, defensive line Tim Smith, punter James Burnip, and they have snapper Neeland Hibbett. Now, I do think that Alabama is going to be another tough team this season, I think. But depends on, what DeBoer does, of course. Now, and of course, what I mean for that is going to be to see what DeBoer does for Alabama, considering the fact that Alabama had not been without a new coach since 2007 when they hired Saban. And now, of course, it's going to be interesting to see what DeBoer can do, like I just said, because DeBoer came from the Pac-12. Now, he did lead the Washington Huskies to the national championship game where they ultimately lost to Michigan. But I do think that it's going to be interesting, but I'm going to say this. I think Alabama's going to win this one. And I just think that, it could be a close game. It could, but however, I think Alabama's going to probably win this one. So I'm going to give this one to Alabama. In the next game, they're playing SEC newcomer Oklahoma. And fun fact, Oklahoma and Missouri used to be in the Big 12 together. And so for Oklahoma, they're coming into this game. I'm sorry. Oh, it's a rivalry game. Sorry, guys, I forgot to mention that. And the last meeting for this rivalry was Oklahoma winning 38-28 back in 2011. And Oklahoma leads this series 67-24 in 5 ties. And, yeah. And, of course, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. And in 2023, Oklahoma went 10-3. And, oh, wait, hold on a second. Wait a minute here. Hold on. Let me just see this right quick. I might have took a look at the wrong schedule here. Hold on, just always need to verify real quick. They went into season 10-3. Okay, yeah, guys, sorry, I had them mixed up with Arkansas. I am so sorry there. Please forgive me. But for Oklahoma, they went 10-3 and they went 7-2 in the Big 12, and they lost to Arizona 38-24 in the Alamo Bowl. And they have 17 starters returning, 4 offensive starters, 7 defense starters, and 6 specialists. And their returnees are quarterback Jackson Arnold, running back Gavin Sawchuk, wide receiver Nick Anderson, wide receiver Andrell Anthony, wide receiver Jaleel Farouk, defensive back Billy Bowman, defensive line Ethan Downs, linebacker Denny Stutzman, defensive back Woody Washington, and defensive back Gentry Williams. And they could be an improved team in 2024, but they have a very difficult schedule that includes Texas, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. And now I do think that Oklahoma, that they may struggle here because, hey, I'm going to tell y'all this. The SEC is a way different league than the Big 12. And for Oklahoma, if Oklahoma can do good in the SEC this first year, it's going to be interesting for this game. But let's just see what happens here. But I just think this is going to be a win for Missouri. But I also did say this, like when I was playing this video, I did say that I think maybe Oklahoma could potentially beat them. But however, I honestly think this is another one of these toss-ups for me. So we're going to have to really wait and see what happens, but I'm going to give this one to Missouri. All right, and then the next game, they're going to be playing South Carolina at South Carolina, and South Carolina is ranked 14th out of 16th on these teams, and it says head coach Shane Beamer may join several other SEC head coaches on the proverbial hot seat. Last year they won only 5 games, and the outlook for this year's team is no better. They don't have adequate depth, and not sure who will be starting QB. They do have Rocket Sanders, who transferred from Arkansas to help the offense, but the defense was weak last year and must improve. And I will say this, that for South Carolina, that defense really, if they don't improve, it's going to be another long year. And for the depth, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do with all this depth they got to fill. But I just think that if for South Carolina, if they want to get better, like I said, they're going to have to improve the defense, figure out the depth, and then pretty much just play their hearts out. But I do think that I think Missouri's going to win this one. I just see it happening. Really, I do. So I'm going to give this one to Missouri. Then the next game, they're playing Mississippi State, and for Mississippi State, they're coming into this season following a 5-7 season. They went 1-7 in the SEC, and they are another SEC team with the new head coach Jeff Lebby. He'll be relying on two transfer quarterbacks, Blake Shapen and tight end Cameron Ball, to lead the Bulldogs offense. It could be a tough year for Mississippi State as their roster is without much needed depth and experience. So really, that just really comes to show, what can happen here for Mississippi State. And I personally think that now I do think that, of course, for Mississippi State, for some of these players here, they have running back Jeffrey Pittman back, running back Seth Davis, safety Corey Ellington, defensive end DeMonte Russell, and defensive line Don Terry Russell. And it's going to be interesting to see, but there are some, but like this says, that they're without much needed depth and experience. So it could be another long year for Mississippi State. So I'm going to give this one to Missouri. In the next game, they're playing Arkansas, which is their final home game of the season. And for Arkansas, Football Times says this here. Hold on. Hold on, guys. Sorry, this magazine sometimes hates me. They're projected to finish 15th of 16 teams in the SEC. Coach Sam Pittman's job is also in jeopardy after going 4-8 overall, winning only one conference game. He may not finish the season. He will have quarterback Taylon Green, a transfer from Boise State, competing with Jacoby Criswell for starting quarterback position. And former head coach Bobby Petrino returns as the offensive coordinator, which could help, but 2024 could be a rough year for the Razorbacks. And here's the some notable returnees they got. They got 7 offensive returners. They have 7 defense returners and 3 specialists. Offensive line, Joshua Braun. Offensive line, Patrick Kudas. Wide receiver, Andrew Armstrong. Wide receiver, Isaac Tesla. Tight end, Luke Haas. Defensive end, Landon Jackson. Defensive tackle, Cam Ball. Defensive tackle, Eric Gregory. Defensive back, Jalen Braxton. Defensive back, Lorendo Johnson. Defensive back, Jaden Johnson. Punter, Max Fletcher. And hold on, guys. Like I said in the last video, this position always goes over my head real quick. Let me check real quick here. Guys, I'm just going to say this, that sometimes, and return specialist, Isaiah Sategna. Sorry, guys. Whenever I'm, covering this stuff, you're going to know that sometimes things go over my head a little bit, so I apologize. But I will say this, though, that for Missouri, and, I forgot to mention, they, from Missouri, but here, we'll get into this here in a minute. I just think that Arkansas is going to be a bit, it's going to be interesting to see what can happen, really, for Arkansas this season, but I think it's going to be another rough year for them. So I'm going to give this one to Missouri here. And for Missouri here, I think I forgot to do the transfer portal real quick. So they do have 3 stars. They have a 4-star in Jeremiah Beasley. They also have a 4-star in Caden Green. And they have a 4-star in Darius Smith, who's coming to Missouri. They have Toriano Pride Jr. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. Coming from Clemson to Missouri. And yeah, so they might perhaps have some good players, but it's going to matter how the execution is for Missouri this season. But I do think this. I think that it's either going to be 10-2 or 9-3. So yeah. And all right, sorry got for y'all today. And also, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video and this series as well. It was pretty fun to make. And also, guys, keep in mind, these are my predictions. These are what I think is happening this season. Feel free to leave your predictions down in the comments down below. And also, guys, I'm going to tell you this. Thank you for your support of the channel and this series. And I really loved seeing y'all's predictions in the comments. I'm being serious. It was it's just awesome to see what you all have to say, and I love responding to them. So feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, thank you for watching this video and this series. So peace out, God bless, and have a good day, everybody.